content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families.
Tonight, you will hear the harrowing tale of Susie Bell, a woman who spent the first half of her life enveloped in beliefs and practices of the Mormon Church. Susie grew up within the church, dedicating herself fully, marrying, raising 6 kids, and building a career as a nurse, all while living as a devoted Mormon. But in 2012, her life took a dramatic turn when she began to question the very foundations of her faith. This questioning led to her excommunication, an event that would unleash a torrent and chaos and turmoil. Susie's story is not just one of religious cord cutting, it's a story of survival against all odds, from enduring a messy divorce, the heartbreaking loss of a child, and to face trauma of being drugged, raped, and publicly harassed by a famous athlete. Susie's life became a battleground. She struggled with substance abuse, faced public humiliation, and battled personal demons that many cannot even imagine. Yet, through it all, Susie did more than just survive. She thrived. Today, she stands as a beacon of strength and courage, ready to expose the darker side of the faith that claims to be a sanctuary of hope, when in actuality it's a prison of control. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem Merlot. Tonight I have a very special guest, Susie Bell. Now, she devoted her life to being a good Mormon. When you think about it, is it a cult? Is it controlling? I don't know, but I've never been around it, but Susie has. She grew up in the Mormon church, devoted her life, and then all of a sudden it took a turn. So welcome to the show, Susie.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so you do have a book coming out. It's not out quite yet. And listeners, once it's out, I will definitely let you know and give you guys the link. But your book that you're coming out is A Piece of Me. It's a memoir of your life growing up in the Mormon church and what you had to deal with. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so growing up in the Mormon church, how was it as a child? I mean, did it feel safe and enduring and felt like you were part of a community, or did you notice things at a young age? I've never been around like Mormon churches or anything, but I know they're very tight knit communities. So I'm not sure how do children, like when you grew up in it, how was it for you as a child?
That's a great question. Growing up as a child, it felt very safe. It was the only thing I ever knew. My father had been a Mormon his whole life. He was born and raised into the church, and I was born and raised into the church. As a child, it felt like a really safe place. As I became a teenager, I started seeing some cracks in it. You begin having questions anyway as a teenager.
Yeah.
And I found that any questions that I did have were met with, those are things we don't ask. We need to have faith and belief. We don't ask those questions.
Right.
And I learned at that time in my life that being quiet and having faith was the way to get through it. And it was the right thing to do, even though it didn't feel right. It was what I was supposed to do. And I did that.
Yep. And that's very reminiscent. Now, when you have I mean, it's very reminiscent of other types of Jehovah Witnesses, Scientology, that kind of tight knit community. It sounds wholesome on the front, but it's like Stepford Wives. I mean, what's going on behind the scenes?
Yes.
You see that a lot with these religious sects, and I me growing up in the Lutheran church, I felt very safe, but as a teen, like you,
Mhm.
you do start questioning things. You wanna know you're like you wanna have a better understanding of things. So, when you started questioning once you became a teen, how were you expressing that to the church and your elders at the church, saying questioning, and then that's when they were kind of snapping back at you? That kind of
My
how it went?
parents, oh, thank you. My parents very much emulated everything that we learned at church at home. When I started
Okay.
having questions, it primarily happened at home first. And I
Mhm.
remember saying things like, because as Mormon women, we are bred literally to be wives and mothers. And at that time, particularly, we were discouraged against having a career. Our job was to have children and multiply and replenish the earth and
Oh.
and have many children. As
Oh, so
many
you
as
were
we
so you're just a breeder. Oh god.
really, that, yeah.
Oh god.
And the church will deny that now and kind of backpedal
Mhm.
with that. But that is why so many Mormon families have so many. They're trying to do a little backpedaling now and say that, women can have careers and do both. But at the time in
Mhm.
the 80s, when I was in the church, there were very strict guidelines. And when I would express to my parents, I think I want to be a journalist someday. I think I want to do this. I want to live in New York and I want to go to UCLA. And they would say,
Mhm.
that is never going to happen. You
Oh.
cannot do those things. Those things will lead you to become very worldly. You stay close to home. You go to church schools. You find a career in nursing or teaching, and you only
Mhm.
use that in the event that your husband dies or he's injured. And so anytime I would try to think
Oh.
outside the box, and I did a lot. I really had those thoughts of wanting
Mhm.
more for my life, but I was taught that those were selfish thoughts and I needed to keep
Keep them in the
those.
box.
Yes.
Keep them in the box. You can have them, but keep them in the box.
Right.
And unfortunate because, when you're growing up in a church, in a religion, and having it part of your culture, you learn that, God is all encompassing in love, but you don't feel that
No,
when you feel trapped, when you feel like a
no.
prisoner, like, I wanna do these things with my life that God gave me, but you won't let
Right.
me because you say it's wrong. Oh god, that would drive me nuts, especially as a teenager because I'm very bullheaded, and when I wanted to do something, I did it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so now you're a teenager, and but so in 2012, is that when you decided to separate from the church, or did something happen for you to want to separate from the church?
It really did. I had been in a marriage at that point for 22 years. And my marriage started falling apart after the death of my baby 8 years into it. It
Mhm,
it was a really challenging time, and at that time, my husband became very much dependent upon opioids and used them for many years, well past our divorce. And
mhm.
so I always say that I dealt with the death of my baby and the death of the emotional, like fun part of my
Your husband.
husband at the
Mhm,
same time because we lost that going to bed in the evening and talking about our day. He was just gone to the world all the time. And so I
mhm,
think that's how he dealt with the death of our baby. And they were prescription medications. So he even more so justified the
yeah,
opioids, the benzodiazepines, the all of it. And I began to, we really began to pull apart from each other and had never taken time away in 18 years at the time that I told him we needed to go and reconnect.
mhm.
And he ended up taking me to Hawaii on a couples trip instead of just the trip that
Oh.
was supposed to be for us to reconnect. His friends came,
Oh, no.
And
Uh,
his friend, because my husband was never very good at making plans, he let his friend make the plans, and then he said, "Yeah, I'll give you the money, but go ahead and make the plans, and we'll go with you." My husband really wasn't into me. Like, he didn't really
yeah.
have the need to spend romantic time alone with me. I mean, how we ever had 6 children, it really makes you wonder. But and really we did, because in the Mormon church you can't have sex till you get married. So then you get married and you go a little crazy. But
Like
so
rabbits.
oh yeah, we were rabbits. But
Yeah.
after 18 years and after he'd been using the medication for over 10, he decided that he would take me to Hawaii. When we got there, we were sharing a 1 bed, 1 bath condo with the couple that we went with. None of us were poor at the time. There was no reason that we had to do it for financial reasons. It was just very, it was not well planned, and no one really cared. And my husband didn't care that we would be sharing a room. He had no intention of any romance. And that was the moment for me that I realized that I had been holding on to a hope with my marriage that I had held on to for too long. And I started
Mhm.
questioning, why have I held on to this crazy hope when this marriage has already been dead for 10 years? Why have I held on to this? Number one, yes, the kids. Number two, it was what I was supposed to do. I knew nothing different than the church. You didn't get
Mhm.
divorced. You didn't have affairs. You didn't think outside of that. And so I started thinking, well, maybe the church isn't true. Because if it was, I've done everything the way that I'm supposed to. I've done everything right. And this marriage is a piece of crap. This is
Yeah.
unfulfilling. And maybe my marriage isn't a loving marriage, and maybe the church set me up for that. And maybe I
Mhm.
should start looking into that, because I'm not happy. I'm pretty damn miserable. And that
Yeah.
was when this is kind of how the change in my life occurred. I went and sat on the beach and cried my damn eyes out. And I thought, what do I need to do to make myself happy? I am responsible for my happiness, not the church, not my husband, not anyone. What am I going to do? And I decided that I was going to go home and work out every day, because in college I had given myself an hour a day. I started working out when I got home. And within a year, I was on a national stage competing in bodybuilding. And so it really
Oh.
took me from a world of this, sweet little, cute little, modest clothes
Mhm.
wearing Mormon mom doing everything the way I was supposed to, listening to my husband, to I don't give a damn what you think about me.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what makes me happy. I'm not going to do it to spite you, but I'm going to do it because I want to be happy, and that's my responsibility. And
Yeah.
he came unglued. He came unglued. The happier that I became, the more in shape I became, the less I started going to church.
Mhm.
It really created marital problems for us.
Right. And, having the death of your child, I mean, that could really change somebody's persona.
Oh, yeah.
Something traumatic like that, and then when you add drugs in there, like the
Yeah.
opioids and things like that, it's just a powder cake, like a bomb that's just ready to go off
It
at any
is.
moment. So,
Absolutely.
and it's very important. And I just want to mention, you kind of had that epiphany moment.
Mhm.
And, I think I'm not sure if it's a woman thing, but, I've had that, where
Mhm.
just one day you just wanna say, "I'm responsible for my own happiness, and I'm gonna do what makes me happy." And that's
Mhm.
very important, especially coming from a control. I was in a very abusive physical relationship. I have mentioned that to my listeners and
Yeah.
things like that. Um but once you have that epiphany moment that you are just not gonna take it anymore,
You know,
I think that's very important for women to know that you need to tune into that feeling,
yeah.
because once it hits, that's your moment. That's your moment to
And
go, and you listen to yourself, and I applaud you for that, because
thank
Lord knows
you.
what would have happened if you didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
I
okay.
agree with you. It's that internal guide that we have as women. And
Mhm.
when and just like you were saying, you knew that moment. When I was telling my story, you knew that moment that it happened for you. And we do. When we go through that, we remember, oh, I remember the moment that I had the epiphany.
You
It
almost
occurs
kind
to
of get the
us.
feeling right here. Right
Mhm.
here, you feel it. It's a good feeling, it's euphoric. Um,
Yeah.
so okay, so now you're bodybuilding. So what now you were publicly harassed, drugged, and raped. Where did that fall into your story?
That came in after my divorce. I was divorced
Okay.
in I let's see, my divorce was finalized in 2013. And this happened within like less than 2 weeks after my divorce. There
Oh.
was a professional athlete who, over about 9 months, would approach me at the gym and ask me out. And as I was going through my divorce, I was seeing another younger guy, and so I kept telling this professional athlete, "No, I'm seeing someone right now." And eventually, after a few times seeing one another in the gym, because the relationship was off and on with this younger gentleman, he asked me out, and I was available. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Mhm.
I've got tickets to the opening of Hakkasan at MGM. It was a new nightclub, and I said, "Why don't we go tonight?" And um, I had to be at work the next morning at 7 a.m. in surgery as a nurse. I was a surgical nurse at the time in orthopedics. And so I just said, let's meet up there. I'll drive my car, you drive yours, we'll meet up, and then I'll head home and get ready for my day in surgery. I had never gone out with this individual before. I didn't know a whole lot of him. Of course, I knew his name. I'd seen him on TV from the time we were in the 80s. He was a baseball player. He was very famous. So I knew who he was, but I also felt
Mhm.
safe. I felt like meeting him there, driving my own car there, driving my own car home. I felt like I was looking forward to it. I thought it would be a lot of
Okay.
fun.
You felt comfortable and you
Oh
just
yeah,
wanted to take the leap. So,
right.
okay, so you go out on a date. How
Mhm.
did that go?
He got there actually a little bit late. I was almost getting ready to leave. It was about 11:30 when he got there. And I was like, "Oh, he stood me up, big deal." But then he rounds the corner and it was super late. It was 11:30 and I thought I'm only going to be able to hang out here another hour or two before I got to go home because I got to get the kids up for school. I got to get to work. So he was a great dancer. He took me down to the bar and asked if I wanted anything to drink. And I had some red wine, and he had these fruity little pineapple girly drinks that I thought were kind
Oh,
of weird for a guy that size, but whatever, to each their own.
yeah, right.
But anyway, as we went out on the dance floor and continued to dance, I remember feeling very dizzy and very lightheaded, disconnected, and almost seeing things as if they were a blur.
Okay.
And I woke up at his house the next morning, shortly before I was supposed to be at work. And I did not realize right away what had happened because I had never been in a situation like that. The last dating that occurred for me was high school, college. I came straight from a marriage and was kind of seeing a 27-year-old. And so, where a lot of other people were very familiar with caution in dating, as a 40-something-year-old woman coming into the dating scene, I knew nothing about how to protect myself, or even I knew nothing about the kind of dangers that were out there in the dating world.
Yeah. You didn't know that men could drug
No,
you, roofie your drink and not, you get knocked out to take you home and you have no idea what happened to you,
no,
and yeah, and growing up in such a sheltered environment, yeah, you're
yeah,
not
very
ready for
sheltered.
what the world has to offer. It's not all rainbows and
No,
sunshine.
it's not.
That's for sure.
It's
So,
it's
yeah,
not.
yeah. So you woke up in the morning and so did you feel like were you hurt? Did you have any type
Yes,
of physical injuries? Okay, so now did you go to the police right away or is this something
I
that you didn't understand or
I did not understand it, and I felt responsible for it. And
okay.
so I woke up in pain, and I knew what had
Mhm.
happened to me, and I
Okay.
felt responsible for it. I felt responsible because in the Mormon church we don't drink, right? Well,
Yeah.
I drank, and I wore a short dress, and I brought it on. And so, interestingly, that's what I thought. That's not what I believe. And as
Mhm.
I realized I had about an hour to get to work, and I was always very on time. And I looked at the clock and I said, I got to get out of here. And he said, oh, your car isn't here. You're going to have to drive my car. And I said, why
Oh.
isn't my car here? He said, because I drove you home last night here.
Oh.
So I thought, so I couldn't drive and I don't remember the drive. Okay, well, I must have gotten really drunk. Shame on me. So
Right.
I drove this car to work, got my kids off to school, felt like a total, honestly, I had so much shame and guilt. And because of the religious beating that I'd taken my whole life with sexual things, the shame was so overwhelming. And I felt like a total whore. That's what I thought in my head, my fault. And I went to work, and I had promised the kids that 2 days later we would go to Huntington Beach, and I took them to Huntington Beach, and I was still having pain, and I was still struggling with what had happened. I decided that I was never going to talk to this person again. Any messages that he had sent to me, I was done with. And to back it up a little bit, before I went to Huntington Beach, the night the of working, I had to go get my car, of course. So I drove back to his house and he drove me to MGM to get my car. I didn't have sex with him. I didn't kiss him because I didn't want to. And I was completely aware. And that was one of the things that people said, well, you went back to his house the next night. Well, I needed to get my car. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot that goes on with that, and people can pick it
Yeah.
apart and all of that. But I took my kids to Huntington Beach, and the boyfriend that I had kind of been dating, the younger guy, he said, hey, I saw pictures of you and, pro athlete all over the internet. Right. What's going on with you guys? And I just like nothing. And it was one time I went out with them and I'm done. I don't want to see him again. And he said, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not okay. He said, what happened? And I told him, and he said, Susie, that is a date rape. If you didn't consent to that and you didn't want it, and you don't even remember the drive home, and that's called date rape. And he asked
Right.
if I drank anything. So he was the one that explained that to me. And as I began to think about it, I thought, that's pretty crappy. That's pretty
Right.
crappy that this guy, if I got so inebriated on 3 glasses of red wine, if I was so inebriated, why didn't he have the courtesy when he knew I had to be in surgery the next day to drive me to my house? If he
Right.
wasn't drunk, and I was just so drunk off my ass off 3 glasses, why didn't he take me to my home? Because he
Right.
didn't want to. He had
No.
plans for me.
Yes,
And
he did.
he didn't care about me. And I felt responsible because of my religious upbringing. And that is where I realized how damaging my religious upbringing was for me in the real world. It did not prepare me for anything in the real world. It didn't give me much in the way of street smarts, in the way of self-worth, in the way of understanding um, that understanding men, because men are very complicated when you've never been around them and you don't understand the dangers
Right.
associated. They can be predators. So in the Mormon church, they're just the ones in charge and we do everything that they tell us to do.
Right.
In the real world, there are a lot of predators. In the church, there are too, by the way, I learned.
Yep.
But so anyway, it was reported when I went into the police, and I did have a date rape test done 2 days later, 2 days after the incident. And when he caught wind of the fact that I had reported it, he went onto social media on Twitter and put my name, my phone number, pictures of my children and where I worked out, and
Oh,
accused me
geez.
of falsifying everything. And he had 500,000 followers back in 2012. And so by posting my phone number, my phone began to get blown up with people calling and texting and calling me a liar and a whore and all kinds of things. Meanwhile, I was in grad school and I was trying to get through finals week as a single
Oh.
mom, freshly
Oh.
divorced. So it was pretty
Oh, geez.
challenging for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to dox you on Twitter, that's just childish.
Right. And they
You
did
know,
nothing. They did nothing to protect me. Twitter let it go.
that's especially with children. That's horrible. Well, and
Yeah.
to kind of circle back, like when you when you said that it was your fault, you were a whore, you were asking for it, that is a clear-cut case of abuse and mind control. They call it mind control in a cult, but it's abuse.
It is.
And
It is.
and I know exactly what you're talking about, because going through my personal experience with domestic abuse, you're like, I must have done something wrong to
Right.
make him mad, you know,
Yeah.
and you don't know what, but you really start internalizing and say, yeah, I must have done something to make him mad, or it's my
Yeah.
fault. I must, you know, and when you start kind of comprehending that and you have that moment, you're like, oh my gosh, I am so damaged right now.
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't, I'm not great. I'm not even thinking for myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's important. And it's hard to, when you come out of a relationship or a religion like that, it's hard to change the
It
way you
is.
perceive things and your thought process and how you internalize things. Because, like you
Mhm.
said, you were not prepared for the world.
No.
So you're having all these things coming at you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to deal with this." And
Yeah.
you're a single mom, freshly divorced, trying to get through school, and now you got
Best
this
shape of my
attitude.
life, and so I'm
Oh,
at
gee.
Target 'cause
Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, that makes me mad that he doxed you. That's so
it does
childish.
me
Uh,
too. I think what makes me more upset is that Twitter did nothing to protect me and allowed it to perpetuate and go on and on
yeah.
and on and on. Yeah, it was bad.
And there should be, you know, when it comes to social media, I mean, everybody has a voice, but there's a responsibility there. And Twitter and Facebook, I know that they've taken down things, but it's the stupid things, or like take down stuff that is important that could put people at harm.
Right.
I've had some friends that are having issues where other people are posting about their children and things like that, and
Wow.
it's just insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Um, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about how you have taken all the turmoil in your life and turned it around to something that is positive and enduring, and now that you're thriving. um and the book again that will be coming out is Pieces of Me. I'll put the banner up real quick. A piece of me, not pieces, but
Mhm.
yeah, and as soon as that book comes out, I'll definitely have a link for it and put it out. And I'll have a link to your website so people could kind of, keep track of it in the program guide today. So we'll take a
Thank
quick
you.
break. When we come back, we'll talk about how Susie has endured.
All right, folks. Summer is here, and the Paranormal 60 swag shop has all your supernatural summer must-haves. To comfortable, breathable tank tops for both men and women, to a paranormal investigator's must-have tool, a Bluetooth speaker for those EVP burst sessions that you want to do. Or you could hang out at a cemetery at night and rock out with the dead with some wicked, wicked tunes. And don't forget your Paranormal 60 sling bag, which you can carry all your summer stuff in while you're out and on the go. And don't forget our number one seller, the travel mug. It's important to stay hydrated, especially in those dank and hot places y'all investigate, especially in the summer. All you got to do is go to paranormal60.com, click the swag shop tab at the top of the page, and then go to the Paranormal 60 collection, and that's where you'll find all your summer must-haves from the Paranormal 60 swag shop. And remember, kids, stay spooky.
Now we're back. Okay, so Susie, taking all the abuse, all the control, everything that you've held onto your whole life now is like gone. It's just you, your kids. How do you take that and turn it into something positive? What did you do?
It took me a really long time, as it does for many of us. I
Yeah.
think when all of the pain and turmoil was happening publicly, that was an opportunity for me to remind myself that I knew the truth, that that was enough for me. For me to know the truth and protect myself was all that I needed to do. I owed no one an explanation. And so I began to go very private into my own life and work on me and the things that I needed, and know that it is not my obligation to convince anyone of anything. And this goes for everything. This is not just this small little situation in my life. This goes for everything. I don't have to agree with people and they don't have to agree with me. And of course, this took a lot of
Right.
counseling for me to come to these understandings. Um, if someone, I don't need to surround myself with a lot of people. I don't need to have a lot of friends. I found that after this situation and all of the dating that I ended up doing in Vegas over the next decade, one of the things I learned about myself is that I didn't really need anyone, any man.
Mhm.
I went to grad school and became a nurse practitioner so that I could take care of myself, so that I would never need to rely upon the control of a man with all of the eggs in his basket financially. And
Yeah.
it's not that I put having a man out of my mind entirely, but I did for a good period of time because I knew that I was not in a place where I could welcome someone into my life because I didn't feel that I was ready to. There was too much trauma between church, between all that I had gone through in my marriage, and now this new horrible um thing that just really set me on a tailspin
Yeah.
emotionally. And I needed time. And so I took that time and I focused on my children, developed my relationships with them, tried to be the best mother I could be, focused on believing in my children and loving them without
Mhm.
conditions, whether they were in the church, out of the church, whatever career they decided to go with. I just wanted to learn to support and love them. And
Mhm.
then the day came that I realized, do I ever want to be with anybody again? And I thought, not necessarily, but if there is someone in this world who has the ability to treat me with respect and kindness, and they make my life better than it is being alone, well, then sure, we'll
Yeah.
entertain it.
Right. And and it's very it's very unselfish of you. I mean, it's a very unselfish thing to say I'm not ready for a relationship. I just came out of a very abusive life.
Yeah, I did.
you know, and there's nothing wrong with that because you're thinking of another person that you haven't even met yet. Because you're
Mhm.
thinking of that person say if I want to love somebody, I want to love them fully and not they deserve that. I'm not going to
Right.
give them half of me. So that is a very honorable thing for you to do. And and I hope your
Thank
kids
you.
realize that too. How is your relationship with your children since they left? Do some of them still practice in the Mormon church?
Just one. So I have five living
Okay.
children, and I have four boys. None of them are active, and my daughter is semi-active in the church.
Mhm.
Activity level in the church, and if you know about Mormonism, they try not to look as extreme as they used to. So
Mhm.
we used to have to wear the magic underwear under our clothes. Like with doing this would be considered pornography. So
What is
my
magic
daughter.
underwear? Please explain.
Oh,
I wanna know
oh,
what magic underwear is. I don't
oh!
know what it is. I've heard of it.
Oh, I am so glad you. Okay, so when we go through the temple to get married or go on our missions, we're around the ages of 18 to 20. We
Okay.
we step up our commitment level in the church another few notches. No one ever talks about what we do in the temple. They just
Mhm.
tell us it's sacred, it's beautiful, and it's going to get us to the next highest level of the celestial kingdom after this life. What they don't tell you is that, and you do know a little bit about the garments. You see
Okay.
them, you hear about them, kind of like you. You see them, you hear about them, but you don't know what it's all about. So
Yeah.
these garments would only allow us to show a very small portion of our necks. They would go down to our below our shoulders, and they would go down to our knees. They were in two pieces. These were our new underwear. This is what our new underwear was. Now, if we had to wear a bra over the top of it, we could, but it needed to go over the top because the garment should be touching all of our body. The weird thing in the temple is when you get these garments, you have to get completely naked. And you have to get completely naked in the temple. And there's like in the women's area, there's a priestess. That's the only place that a woman can actually practice as a priestess is in the temple. And you're
Mhm.
naked with this little cloth over you that is see-through, and it's got big slits up the side. And she blesses you that you'll be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And then she proceeds to dress you in your new underwear that you will be required to wear day and night for the rest of your life. And so you walk out
Oh,
just like, I
do they give you
hated
a
it.
couple pairs?
Well, so
I mean, I can't
you
imagine having to wear the same one day in and day out. It'd get a
That's a
little
great
funky.
question. So you are responsible as a member of for buying your own underwear. The church sells it to you, of course, at a cost. It's like $5 per piece. So it's $10 for your undies. What a great deal, right? Except you have to give 10%
BOGO
of your
deal.
income to the church too. So it's like, are your underwear really that cheap? Or do they cost you 10% of your income? So
Gosh.
yeah, and then you buy them and bring them with you. They dress you in them and then you change them every day like underwear. But if you have sex at night, you are required to put them on right after. You should not sleep naked with your husband. They're very the bishops are very it's night and day. You wear them night and day, not night and day until and unless you have sex. Doesn't work
That's
like that.
that's so weird. And there's another thing I've heard about the Mormon church, something about a sheet. Is that something that,
Um,
or is
no,
that,
I think I've heard that too. I think that's in the fundamental,
oh,
but
oh,
yeah,
the
they don't.
FDLS?
Yeah,
And
yes,
that's another thing too. Maybe my listeners would like to know that. Like, what is the
yeah,
difference? Because they always associate FDLS with the Mormon Church. Now, it's
yeah,
just the FDLS is basically kind of like a religious sect that came off the Mormon
exactly.
Church.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's not like all Mormons are like, oh, keep sweet. What's that guy's
Oh,
name?
like
I
doing the
can't. Je-
polygamy and
yeah,
what is
Jeffries or whatever his name is.
Jeff? Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? I can see
I
his
know,
face
me
too.
too. I know, it's just, but yeah, like, you know what I'm saying, but it's like these religious cults like that. I mean, it's so bizarre. Like some of the ritualistic things that you do, and it's so out of the norm, like Scientology. Like some of the things,
Yeah,
like if I was there and like if they had to dress me in underwear and do it, I'm like, why is this a thing? What is going on? It's just so bizarre. But yeah, I never knew what the magic underwear was. Now I know it's
yeah,
a full body underwear, and wow, that's
and
amazing.
yeah, yep.
Oh gosh.
And you even like it. You can't. There's no excuse for like for instance, pregnant in Vegas with the temperature being 116 degrees. No excuse to not wear your garments. Absolutely none. Just be obedient.
Oh
Like,
geez.
crazy. I hated it.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, you have no way to live your own life. You're so
Right down to your damn
controlled.
underwear.
Right. To your underwear. Did they write your name in them? I mean, you know,
It's my giant underpants!
that would have been hilarious if they embroidered your initials on your underwear. Oh my gosh. Well,
No,
thank you
but
so
I
much.
will tell you this. On the
Yeah.
little tag on the inside, it has a picture of the temple.
Oh my gosh, it is so corny. Oh, jeez. Religion. You gotta love it, right? Well, thank you so much, Susie, for joining me. And I'm going to put resources in the program guide for people. My father helped people, counseled people when they left cults. So I've been around cult culture my whole
Yeah,
life. My dad had books on it. He also helped people leaving Jehovah Witnesses, Mormons,
yeah,
separating from the church because it is um, a mental it's a mental cord cutting and a spiritual cord cutting.
it
And
is.
you have to learn to live your life outside of what you known your whole life. And that is
Right.
hard. So you do need counseling. So I will find some counseling resources for people and put it in the program, Brian, along with some domestic abuse, because that is very important and it's something
Mhm.
that I stress. And, if you find yourself in a situation, whether it's an abusive relationship or if you're with a church or some type of organization that you feel that something isn't right, you got to speak up. And there's resources for you. So I'll find all those resources for you. But thank you so much. Now, you do have a website. What is your website?
It is www.getwellwithsusiebell.com.
And I'll definitely have a link for that in today's program guide. Now, you're like, you do kind of like a wellness thing. Is that correct? Perfect.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So you deal with are you dealing with like menopause, hormone treatments, B12s and all that? And where are you located?
So I'm licensed in Washington, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, so I can do online, and I do a lot of Zoom calls. And then I have a physical office in Wenatchee, Washington. I was in Vegas 30 years, and I'm so glad to just have a break from that and be in a tiny little community. So I offer hormone replacement, IV therapy, those kinds of things. And I also have an office in Leavenworth, which is about 30 minutes from Wenatchee. So yeah,
Perfect.
but most of what I do is online.
That's awesome. And it's what a beautiful thing. You take a life of turmoil and you turn it to something to help others. And that's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much, Susie. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.